Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I'd like to begin by thanking you for checking out today's podcast episode. Now, when you get the opportunity, please visit thepursuitofmanliness.com. You can do several things there. You can find this episode, the whole catalog of previous episodes. You can sign up for the email newsletter. You can learn about the herd. You can learn about next year's men's retreat. You can learn about Tribe Builder and Tribe. The next session of Tribe 15, the registration is currently open until around the middle of November. You can go to the website. You can learn more details there. I also want to remind you, the midweek A Quiet Life episode is sponsored by Loader Road Goods. LoaderRoadGoods.com out of Coshocton, Ohio. I had the opportunity recently to spend some time with Chris Kent. He is the guy behind Loader Road Goods. Now, I want you to know, we just hit October. It's time to think about Christmas. You say, oh, you're one of those guys. No, listen, if you want to get something from Loader Road Goods, you need 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time. You got to place that order. And also know that any order over $50 gets free shipping. So LoaderRoadGoods.com. The link will be at the bottom of the show notes. Men, it's time for today's podcast episode. Well, as we get this thing started, let me begin by a really important piece of information. Little Debbie has their Christmas tree snack cakes back out, and they've added to the rotation, so get to your local grocery store. There's not many reasons to go to the store, but that's one of them. Okay. You can tell by the title, we're talking about what I'm calling old man mode. Now, let me say, on the onset, old man mode is a compliment. Okay. I say that because I've used the term silverback before, and there's guys that are not sure how to take that. To me, it's a compliment to say that you are a silverback. I mean, look at me. I'm silver from head to toe. It's a compliment. What that means is you got some years on you, and that's a good thing. So when I say old man mode, I want you to know on the onset, it's a good thing. It's a compliment. But I want you to consider guys from your past. Maybe it was a grandfather. Maybe it was somebody that lived in the neighborhood. You know, someone at your church, your local ball fields, wherever you're at. Think about some guys that you used to see from a distance, or maybe they were related to you. I don't know, and how you looked at them. You know, there's an element of admiration to those guys. You know, depending on how your family perceived them or treated them. You know, I think back on some men that I'm recalling in my timeline of life that have been replaying. Now, listen, this idea of old man mode, I've been thinking on this for months now, and so this is not something that came to me last night. This is something I've been thinking on for months. So I made some notes, and I'm going to share those notes with you. An element of admiration for those guys. To me, I believe their presence mattered. Now, whether they were a guy that could always fix it, a guy who had a story to tell, a guy who was the patriarch, you know, a guy who served in the military or whatever, store owner, you know, whatever. Their presence mattered. And lack thereof, you know, when their presence wasn't available or they are no longer with us, there was certainly a vacancy. They had a unique perspective. You know, Tom Brokaw wrote that book, you know, The Greatest Generation. And it did not dawn on me until reading that book that those who fought in World War II were raised during the Great Depression. They were born and raised during the Great Depression. So, you know, they had a very unique perspective. Now, obviously, we're many years beyond that at this point, 80 plus years beyond World War II. But even people today, when you think on people today, older people, their perspective is very unique, different than people younger than them, wherever they're at. And again, I'll go back to the admiration idea that I believe they were respected. I believe there was an element of respect to them. I can remember walking into like a McDonald's or something like that and seeing, you know, 5, 6 older guys with their coffee cups, yucking it up, you know, reading the newspaper and kind of having this camaraderie. And I don't know what they talked about. I don't know what they did outside of meeting there, but seeing those people, whether it was in church or in the community or wherever, there was something about them. And then I think you get to an age, and I don't know what that age is, but you get to an age where being an old man is a derogatory term, right? So whether it's your teenage years and you call your father your old man, or you make fun of old men, or you look at the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they think, the way they act, or music they listen to or don't listen to, or things they do or don't do. And I think there's a season of our life where an old man idea is a bit of a derogatory term. We don't hold them in as high esteem as we should. We almost see them, I know I do at times, or I have at times, seen them as maybe slowing us down for a little bit. We see them as, funny, right? I've told the story before of serving at a church where we had this particular elder who was the oldest guy in the room. At a certain point in our meeting, we had meetings in the evening. At a certain point in our meeting, he would go, "All right, that's it." And he would get up, he'd walk out and go home. And we would continue to meet. And I would laugh when he did it and thought, boy, that old boy's onto something, right? But I didn't really give a lot of thought to it. No, he had wisdom to say, that's enough. I'm going home. And again, I think when you think back on these older men, these older guys that have been in your life, there's some that have been great examples, and there's some that have not been great examples. I know as I get older, as I get more years under me, that window of old man mode closes dramatically. Things that my kids are into, the way my kids talk, the things that interest them or whatever, many of those things no longer interest me. And I don't have a desire to dress like that, talk like that, listen to that, watch that. I just don't. And I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to reclaim my youth. But I've been spending some time thinking about this idea of old man mode. And there's certain things from older guys that we could or should learn. Whether they're with us or not, we can take with us and we can apply directly to our lives. Again, full confession, I feel like I'm getting into a season of life where maybe I'm shifting gears a little bit and I'm starting to look at some things quite a bit different. I'm starting to look at relationships. I'm starting to look at how I spend my time, my money, what matters the most. I'm starting to look at those things different. And boy, just over and over, it kind of hits me, kind of going into old man mode here. Now, Job 12:12 says, wisdom is with the aged, and understanding in length of days. Now, the irony is next week's Quiet Life podcast is going to talk about a couple of those words in there. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Where should we in a culture get our wisdom and instruction? We should get it from the older generation. I think there was a time where we were probably more prone to that than we are now. We can get, or believe we can get, everything we want from Google, Chat GPT, or AI, or anything else. You used to have to go to like a encyclopedia, or you have to go to a library. You had to go to a card catalog. And I'm not trying to be a curmudgeon here saying, we had it better than they have it today. I'm just saying information, in particular wisdom, was transferred in a different way. You had to go look for it. You had to spend time listening to it. You had to spend time learning from people. You had to learn from their example. And when I think of these older guys, I hope this isn't nostalgia talking. And I don't think it is. And this is why I've been sitting on this idea for a while now, because I didn't want to record something as soon as I thought of it and just try to kick it out and regurgitate it and go, does this stick? I wanted to think on this, and I've been spending some time thinking on this. I shared in a video recently, just a quick little video online, that my first lead pastor that I worked with in ministry, his name is John Willis. He's a good man. And so I come to this church and I'm working with John Willis. I have no experience, but I have a plethora of confidence and arrogance. Okay, I don't know if arrogance is a word, but I was definitely confident. I felt confident that I knew what I was doing. I didn't. I look back and think, oh boy, you're a knucklehead. But anyhow, the thing about John is he was always drinking coffee. Now, I wasn't a coffee drinker back then, but John was always drinking coffee, and he just had a different pace about him. And I remember there were times where that would greatly frustrate me, looking at John's pace, like, come on, man, let's go, let's get on with it. In particular, when we were in meetings, John would be drinking his coffee, and he would hold it in his mouth. Now, I wasn't a coffee drinker, but I thought that was strange because isn't coffee hot? Why would you hold hot water in your mouth? Many years later, I am now a coffee drinker. I have been for quite a while. And I am starting to understand it. As a matter of fact, recently, I hurt my back. I hurt my neck, my shoulders, and my back. It was quite a day. And I was kind of going at a different pace, and I'm having my morning coffee. I took a sip of coffee, and I just kind of held it in my mouth for a second. I don't know why. I don't ever do that. And I held it in my mouth for a second, and I thought, uh-oh. And immediately my mind went back 20 years ago to a place in Centralia, Illinois, where I would sit there and watch John do this and think, what are you doing? Just drink the coffee. And it hit me in that instant, two things. One, I think John was just enjoying his coffee. Why not enjoy your coffee? I find myself oftentimes where I go hiking or I'm on a trail by myself and I'm going at a pace that is not necessary. And I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I really want to get to the end where I complete it. You get to the end, when you complete it, what do? You get in the car and go home. So why not enjoy it? What I do when I'm not hiking, when I'm not camping, when I'm not outdoors, spend most of my time hiking, thinking about hiking, camping, outdoors. What do I do when I'm car camping or making food outside, or I'm thinking about the house? Like, whoa, if I just went home, I could microwave this and be done with it, or I sleep in my own comfortable bed. Or it's amazing how the mind works. And then it dawned on me, not only was John enjoying his coffee, I think John was holding his peace. You see, when you work with a guy like me who has confidence and not any experience at that point, I think there were times that John, using discernment, just grinned at me, held the coffee a little bit longer, and we just continued the conversation. Now, it wasn't just he and I. There were another guy on staff. But you get my point. Me and the other guy on staff would often say, I don't know why he does that, holding the coffee. John would do that in deacons meetings and elders meetings. He would drink the coffee, and he'd sit back in this giant desk calendar in his lap, and he would just look at it. And I look at that now and think, I think there was great wisdom in what old John was doing then. And he wasn't old then, I don't want to say that. But when I look at John, I think, boy, there's great wisdom in what he was doing. Here I'm a young guy trying to get my Palm Pilot to work and trying to get my cloud to sync up and my Evernote to have all my files on it. And I wanted, if someone said this is what everyone's doing, then I had to do it. Or this is what we need to do and we got to do it right now. I want to get it done before lunch, and then we move on to something different. And John he had a different pace of play about him. And I think now I'm like, I think there was wisdom in that. Why does it take us so long to learn wisdom? I think there's something about youth that we have to cut our teeth, that we have to exert great energy and grit and all the things that go along with that. I think, driving, shopping. I was just in the store. That's how I found out about the Little Debbie cakes, and you can thank me later. But I started to go down an aisle, but there was an older couple that went in front of me. Even knowing I was going to have this conversation, I was still a little put out. I thought, I'm going to go to a different aisle. Boy, this is going to take them forever to get down there. I went to a different aisle, walked around, whatever. I came back to the aisle I originally wanted to go to, and they were still there. And I thought, not in a hurry. Not in a hurry. Why are we always in a hurry? Why are we always thinking we got to compete with somebody? Now, and I could belabor this point, so I want to land it here. Old man mode, what is it? Here's what I know about old men, the ones that I admire and look up to. Not all of them, okay? But I think you could get an image in your mind. And if you didn't have anyone in person, maybe you could think of someone, in television or movies or whatever you say. That guy represented an older guy, and there's some character qualities here that I could admire. And I just want you to consider it. I don't care if you're 20 years old. Consider what going into old man mode could do for you right now as you think about the next, 60 years of your life, because they're going to go quick. I don't know the amount of time you have on this planet, but what I do know is, why are we in such a rush? Because once we get to wherever we think we're getting to, it's never what we thought it was going to be. And so we might as well enjoy the journey. You might as well make the most of this day. You might as well go outside, get some fresh air in your lungs, and enjoy having a conversation with someone, and enjoy listening to someone tell their story. Enjoy fixing something instead of buying something where you could just get it, instantly, or instead of just throwing it away, keeping it and saying, what, it'll do me for a little bit longer. It'll be all right. Here's some things. Number one, here's how I see it. You might disagree. You might say, I don't have any old guys in my life like that. Well, I would go to Titus 2, by the way, if you want to figure out what this list should look like, biblically speaking. That's a great place to go. Remember, Titus was going to teach the older men, who are older men were going to teach the younger men. Do the younger men want to learn? Not always. I'm speaking as a young man who wasn't keen on learning all the time. One of the greatest pieces of advice I had ever received in my life was, remain teachable. Remain teachable. Don't ever think you have it all figured out. Well, I've had to learn that the hard way. So here's the list. Number 1, steady. Older guys are just steady. Their pace is different. Their perspective's different. The way they drive their car is different. The volume's different. They're just steady, aren't they? They're not into impressing you. They're not into being flashy. Most of them are not into being front and center. They're not into what keys, what room can I get into, what table do I get to sit at. Most of the real, genuine, godly old men that I know, they've gone through some stuff, and they'll tell you a story if you want to hear it. And if you don't, they'll keep it to themselves. They're just steady. What if we had a bunch of men who are just steady? You say, I'm going into old man mode. I'm just going to be consistent. I'm not going to get my feathers ruffled. I'm not going to get worked up over things. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. I'm not going to get overly emotional. I'm not going to... Man, old guys got that stuff too, but they have a different pace of play about them. It's just different. They're just steady. Number 2, they're prepared. Doesn't an old guy always have something like pull out of his pocket? Like he always has a handkerchief. He always has he didn't carry anything he didn't need, but he was always prepared. It's almost like he knew what he was getting himself into. Just did a recent Quiet Life podcast about some things you need to keep on hand. I don't know if you got to carry those things around you with you all the time, but man, it's just something about old guys, man. Them godly old men, they're always prepared. Physically and spiritually. Spiritually, they got a good word for you. I was just talking to one today. Going through a lot in his life. Just visited the heart doctor. His wife's got cancer. We got all this. And he shared Proverbs chapter 20. No, forgive me, Psalm 20. Psalm 20. And I thought, Psalm 20 doesn't ring a bell, so I look it up. Wow. He had a word for me. He's prepared. But he's also a guy, if you're with him, you say, man, you got a pen? He's got it. Go into old man mode. Be prepared. What do you need, man? Often now, I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because I felt like I'm feeling a little like an old man. I don't want to do this. I carry my reading glasses in my pocket. I'm in reading glasses mode most of the time. And I got a pen now I keep in my pocket most of the time. Handkerchief, certain times of the year. Now, when I first started doing that, I thought, man, I feel like an old man. Isn't it great when someone says, Jerry, you got a knife? You better believe it. Yeah, they said, I figured you'd have one. Yeah, I want to be prepared. I want to have what I need. The third one, I've kind of hit on this a little bit, but they're ready to speak, but prepared to listen. You get around an old guy, he'll let you tell a few tales or two, right? He had no problem with that. He ain't in the business of needing to call you out all the time. Most old guys, they'll listen, they'll watch, they'll observe, they'll let you tangle yourself up in your tall tales of whatever you think you've accomplished. And brother, believe me, they've done some life. Every once in a while, I think on my life, my time I've had on this planet so far, and I think, man, I feel like I've had some really unique experiences. I've shared some of them on the podcast, some of them, nope, not fit for this. But if we get one-on-one, I'll tell you a story or two or think, well, I think that might fit given this scenario. But I'll tell you what I'm learning the hard way, there's tremendous value in listening. I always feel like you tell me a story about making a pizza, I got to tell you about one where I made a pizza too. We don't need to do that. Let the guy just tell a story about making a pizza. Let the guy just tell a story about buying some shoes, having a good day. Every time someone tells a story or has a thing, they don't need me to have a thing too or to tell a story too. They don't need it. I need to just listen. Or what I'm learning, and again, as I said in the beginning there, hard way. I'm learning it the hard way. I need to ask more questions. You tell a story, I don't need to tell you my story too. This isn't the battle of stories. What I need to do is ask you a question. So when was that? Man, how did that go? Who was that person again? Just to let you know I'm listening, just to inquire more. And what you'll find is you'll end up learning a whole lot more about that person. You might learn a few things about yourself. We just got to be ready to listen. You know, I think another thing, so I got steady, prepared, ready to speak, but prepared to listen. And they change the temperature for the good. And what I mean by that is their presence matters. Yeah, they'll fall asleep and they'll snore and they go a little slower and they'll, whatever. I remember when my wife's grandparents came to visit, Grandpa had this cup in the bathroom. McDonald's cup, that's fine. And in the cup was his teeth. I said, what are we doing? I didn't grow up around this. What do we got teeth in a cup, in a McDonald's cup? Oh yeah, he keeps those and then he can do that, soak his teeth at night. You got a medicine box the size of I don't know what, and I'm thinking, I don't think I'm ready for this. Here's what I know, though. An old man mode, a godly man, he'll change the temperature for good. His presence will matter. They'll do some things different. Listen, brother, we're getting that place. We're going to do some things different. But does your presence change the room for the better? Do they say, hey, old Bob's over there. When he's here, we're in good shape. Bob doesn't have to eat first. Matter of fact, he'll go last. Bob will take out the garbage. Bob doesn't care what channel it's on. Bob doesn't care if he can hear that. Sometimes you can't hear the TV nowadays because, they like to have the reading at the bottom. You see, Bob doesn't care. Bob's content. He's just happy to be here with his people, man. To me, that's old man mode. That's going in the mode where I'm like, it doesn't have to be about me. I had my day. I've had my day. And it wasn't all that great. So now I'm going to let you all have your day. And I'm just thankful I get to be around you while you have your day. I'm just thankful I get to be here. I'm just thankful for that slice of cake that I got to have, or that roast that you let me eat, or the barbecue that you invited me to, or the camping chair I get to sit in next to you. Man, I'm just thankful for that. Change the temperature wherever you're at for good. Here's the other thing I know about old man mode. This is hard for some of you guys. Old man mode, you're not trying to reclaim your youth. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not the wisest man in the room. I'm certainly not the dumbest person in the room. Here's what I know. I don't need to be the center of attention. I don't need to be the coolest. I don't need to be the loudest. I don't need to be the funniest, whatever. I'm not going to try to reclaim my youth. Yes, every once in a while I'll turn on the 80s station and I'll listen to a few tunes from back then. I was in a store, had to return something and had 80s going, so I popped in the car, put on some 80s. I'm over it now. I'm over it. I don't need to go back to that. I lived it. I don't need to go back. I don't need to go see these bands in concert. I don't need to get an argument over who's the GOAT, or listen, man, I don't need to reclaim my youth. I'm thankful for it. But I'll tell you what, in Christ, that guy no longer lives. The life I now live in the flesh, I live for the Son of God who gave his life for me. And man, I hope you do the same thing. We don't need to reclaim our youth. Don't be the guy who's afraid of getting older. Man, I had a guy say that to me one time. He said, whatever age you are, there's someone that wishes they were that age. I thought, yeah, why are we hung up on that? Why do we care what our age is, our number is? Just be thankful that you got today. As the Hebrew writer said, today, if you hear his voice, if you hear whose voice? Jesus. You hear his voice. Don't harden your hearts. So we're not trying to reclaim our youth. And I'll end where we started this whole podcast way back in the day. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 11 and 12. Aspire to live a quiet life. Work with your hands. Be dependent upon nobody. That you might be thought well of by outsiders. Right? Like that's the summation of this idea of old man mode. I don't need to be flashy. I don't need to be the best. I don't need to be the loudest. I don't need to chime in on everything. I don't need to do whatever the world says we need to do. The world will take as much of you as you're willing to give. And so when I consider old man mode, it's me throttling it back, shifting down a gear and saying, hold on. No, I'm not going to be treated like that. I'm not going to buy into that. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to take care of my house. Won't be flashy. I'm going to take care of the people that live in my house. That probably won't be flashy either. I'm going to work hard. Probably not going to be a big celebrity at doing that, but I'm going to try to work hard. I'm going to try to change the temperature of the room for the better if I show up. I want to be prepared. I want to encourage. I want to listen. Hey, man, I'm just thankful that God allows me to be a part of this. Amen. So, guys, that's a summation of what I've been chewing on. I'm going to say this again. When I say old man mode, I say it as a compliment, a term of endearment. And I hope you see it that way. I hope you can think of some guys, some men in your life that you look to and you think old man mode, you're like, yeah, that was that guy. It's not everybody. It's not everybody. There's plenty of guys you can think of and say, boy, that guy was like no good. So nope. That's not what we're doing. We're thinking on those people that have set that great example for us. And we say, hey, what can I learn from that? Think about the reality of the end of your life, whatever that day is. Let's say you get 80 years on this planet. I don't know how many we get. Nobody knows. Is whatever you're chasing today, whatever seems urgent today, do you think it'll be just as urgent a year, 10 years, 30 years from now? Probably not. But there will be some things a year, 10 years, 30 years from now that will still absolutely matter. And they'll matter long after we leave this planet. Those are the things we probably need to focus on. Those are the things we probably need to go after. So, men, I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys who watch, share the show. Again, just something to think about. I'm thankful for y'all. I'm thankful we get to have conversations like this. I know this is a bit different, just like the storing up for disaster is a bit different. That's what the quiet life's about. That's what the quiet life's about. We're going to do some things different. We're not in competition with anybody. We're just going to go like an old man would do, hitting that golf ball 150 yards right down the middle. Amen. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.